So now that we know what trauma is and how therapy can heal trauma, let's talk a little bit about what to look for in a really good therapist. The first thing that you really need when conducting any kind of therapy is a strong sense of safety. Remember, the reason why we were traumatized by unpleasant events in the first place was that it didn't feel safe to fully express the feeling associated with the event that happened at the time. If we had been able to fully express how we were feeling about what's happened to us at the time that it happened, we wouldn't have been left with a residual emotional charge called trauma. The event may still have been very unpleasant, and certainly there are many very unpleasant events that we go through in life, but if we're able to fully express how we feel about those events at the time, then we don't end up being traumatized. Trauma happens when we weren't feeling safe enough to fully express how we felt about what had happened to us. So the number one thing that you need when talking to a therapist is a sense of safety. Now, this can be a little bit confusing because it's normal for a client to feel anxious when going to the first session. And I felt anxious the other week when turning up to a psychologist from the college's counselling unit, and it turned out that my anxiety was not unfounded in that case. So it's important to separate any feelings of anxiety that you might have about talking to a therapist for the first time from the bodily sensation that you get around another human being when you know that you feel safe around them. And the second thing, once you feel a sense of safety, that really good therapy involves is empathy. Our brains are wired for socialization, and part of that is our ability to feel feelings of other people. And that's essentially what empathy is. Having an empathic therapist reflect back to you the way that you're feeling, to normalize it, to make it okay, by simply saying, wow, you felt really frightened in that situation, or you must have felt really angry with your mother when she treated you that way. These sort of things allow us to feel a sense of empathy that allows us to go deeper into the emotionally charged memory that we're wanting to heal. Again, often we've been taught not to deal with emotions or that it's not safe to deal with emotions. So having an empathic therapist can get you access to deeper emotional places than you can by yourself through other techniques such as, say, yoga or meditation. Now, it's not that yoga or meditation are necessarily bad things, they're great things to do, but combining those with an empathic therapist is likely to heal your trauma much more quickly than simply meditating on its own would, for instance. Now, in order for a therapist to be really empathic when you're experiencing strong emotions, it's important that they've done a lot of work on themselves in order to heal a lot of their past trauma. One of the catches about empathy is that when someone else around us is experiencing strong emotions, our natural empathic response is likely to cause us to feel similar emotions, particularly if we've had events in our past that we haven't fully healed yet. I suspect the problem that a lot of my clients experience with the psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, and other helping professionals that they saw before me was that the people that they went to hadn't done enough of this kind of work in order for them to really be comfortable with my clients' unpleasant feelings. And I suspect it was the same case for the psychologist that I saw at college recently. In order to be genuinely empathic with someone when they're in a state of deep suffering and really experiencing strong, unpleasant emotions, the therapist needs to be comfortable enough to be able to sit with that without trying to short-circuit the healing process with distraction, or challenge, criticism, judgment, or any of the other techniques that we normally use as human beings to avoid our own unpleasant feelings when we're triggered by the unpleasant feelings of somebody else. So those are three things that you can look for in choosing a therapist. The first is that you feel a strong sense of safety when you're in their presence. The second is that you feel a strong sense of empathy when you're around them. And the third is that they've done enough of their own personal processing work that they can really sit with you when you're experiencing very strong, unpleasant feelings. And one of the things that happens when we go looking for a therapist or counselor is that we tend to attract people that are familiar to us. So in my case, I had a mother that was very controlling and quite unempathic, and a father that was quite passive. So it's no real surprise to me now that when I went and saw a counsellor at college recently, they were like my mother. They were quite cold and unempathic. And I know that that's not what I'm looking for now, but nevertheless, my unconscious mind tends to be drawn towards that. Or the other way of looking at it is that just when the circumstances that the universe provides lines that up, my unconscious mind is likely to notice that pretty strongly. So, unfortunately, that means that when we go seeking a therapist, we can tend to be drawn to people that have exactly the sort of problem that we're trying to resolve, which can be helpful on the one hand, or it can also mean that we might need to persist in order to find somebody who can actually help. So if the first therapist you see doesn't help, or if they don't have the empathy you need, or if you don't feel safe around them, or if they just don't seem to be able to move you forward, then it's important to not just give up on the whole process, and to actually just go, no, this is important to me, I'm going to keep looking until I find what I'm looking for.